We're still in chapter 26, and in this talk we are going to go over water balance and extracellular fluid osmolality. So water intake has to equal water output, and this is going to be about 2,500 mils per day. And water intake, most of the water that we actually get is going to be from food and beverages, but a little bit is from metabolism. It's like 10%. And this is called metabolic water or water of oxidation. And this is the water that's produced by cellular metabolism. So if you remember back a couple of chapters ago, we talked about the electron transport chain, and we talked about oxygen being the final electron acceptor and water forming. And that's the metabolic water. Now, water output is going to include water lost via urine and sensible water lost, which is going to be the water that's lost through the skin and the lungs, as well as perspiration and feces. Osmolality is maintained around 280 to 300 milliosmoles. A rise in osmolality is going to stimulate thirst, and it's going to cause ADH to release. A decrease in osmolality is going to cause an inhibition of thirst and going to cause ADH inhibition. And if you remember from last chapter, what ADH is going to do is it's going to insert aquaporins into the collecting duct, which is going to cause the reabsorption of water. So if ADH is being released, the individual is going to produce a more concentrated, low volume urine, and they're going to conserve more water. So we have the intake and output each day. So about 10% of the water we get comes from metabolism, about 30% from food, about 60% from beverages. The water is lost via feces, sweat, urine, and then also the insensible loss, and this is through the skin and the lungs. Thirst mechanism is a driving force for water intake, and this is going to be governed by what's called the hypothalamic thirst center. And hypothalamic osmoreceptors detect extracellular fluid osmolality, and they're going to be increased if plasma osmolality increases 1 to 2%, dry mouth, a decrease in blood volume or pressure, and then angiotensin II or baroreceptor input. Drinking of water is going to inhibit the thirst center, and there are inhibitory feedback signals that include the relief of a dry mouth, and then the stretch receptors of the stomach and intestine being activated. So if there is an increase in extracellular fluid osmolality, this is going to signal the osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus, which is going to send a signal to the hypothalamic thirst center, which is going to cause a sensation of thirst, which is going to cause a person to take a drink. The water is going to moisten the mouth, throat, and also stretch the stomach and intestine. Water will be absorbed from the GI tract, and this is going to decrease extracellular fluid osmolality and increase plasma volume. Also, we would have a decrease in saliva, dry mouth, which would also stimulate the hypothalamic thirst center. A decrease in plasma volume is going to lead to a decrease in blood pressure, which will do a couple of things. We have this kicking off down here to the hypothalamic thirst center, as well as granular cells in the kidney. Then we have the renin angiotensin aldosterone mechanism kicking in, and then the production of angiotensin II goes up, which is also going to go here to the hypothalamic thirst center. And then again, we go all the way down to decreasing extracellular fluid osmolality and increasing plasma volume. Obligatory water losses explain why we can't go very long without water. And this includes the insensible water that's lost, or insensible water loss from skin or lungs, and then sensible water loss from urine to excrete waste, obvious sweat, and feces. And then the volume of urine excreted and solute concentration also depend upon fluid intake, diet, and water loss via other avenues. So we move on to talking about the influence of ADH. Water reabsorption in the collecting ducts is proportional to ADH release. And again, this goes back to what I said a couple slides ago. ADH is going to insert aquaporins into the collecting duct, which is going to cause the reabsorption of water. A decrease in ADH levels is going to lead to dilute urine and a drop in volume of body fluids. An increase in ADH is going to lead to concentrated urine because of that reabsorption of water that's occurring, which is going to increase the volume of body fluids. Hypothalamic osmoreceptors sense extracellular fluid solute concentration and regulate ADH accordingly. Other factors may lead to ADH release. So like large changes in blood volume or pressure. So this could be from like intense sweating, vomiting, diarrhea, severe blood loss, all that kind of stuff. A decrease in blood pressure is going to cause an increase in ADH release. This is going to be due to the vessel baroreceptors and renin-angiotensin-aldosterone mechanism. And I've already mentioned some of these things that can cause a decreased blood pressure and volume. I didn't mention traumatic burns and prolonged fever. So an increase in extracellular fluid osmolality, we also have an increase in sodium concentration in the plasma, will stimulate the osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus, which will stimulate the posterior pituitary to release ADH. ADH targets the collecting ducts in the kidneys, which is going to lead to water reabsorption, which is going to result in a small urine volume and a decrease in extracellular fluid osmolality and an increase in plasma volume. There are three principal abnormalities of water balance. The first is dehydration. And this is so extracellular fluid loss due to hemorrhage, severe burns, prolonged vomiting or diarrhea, profuse sweating, water deprivation, diuretic abuse, or endocrine disturbances. We have signs and symptoms include a cottony oral mucosa, being thirsty, having dry flush skin, and this may lead to weight loss, fever, mental confusion, hypovolemic shock. That's where the blood volume gets so low that the heart can't efficiently pump enough blood to the tissues, and loss of electrolytes. So excessive loss of water from the extracellular fluid, we're going to have an osmolality increase out here, which is going to cause the cells to lose water, and so they're going to shrink. Hypotonic hydration is also known as water intoxication or cellular overhydration. This can occur if an individual has renal insufficiency or rapid ingestion of excess water. The extracellular fluid osmolality will decrease, causing hyponatremia. This is going to result in net osmosis of water into the tissues and the swelling of cells. So with dehydration, the cells are losing water. With hypotonic hydration, the cells are going to gain water. They're going to swell. Symptoms include severe metabolic disturbances, nausea, vomiting, muscular cramping, cerebral edema, possible death, and the treatment would be hypertonic saline. So this is somebody who is drinking a lot of water. Maybe she's, I don't know why she would be drinking in excess of water, possible hazing, and extracellular fluid osmotic pressure falls. So the osmolality out here goes down, and then water moves into the cells by osmosis, and the cells will swell. The third one that we talk about is edema. And this is an atypical accumulation of interstitial fluid resulting in tissue swelling. It's not cell swelling. Only volume of interstitial fluid is increased, not other compartments. This can impair tissue function because it could potentially increase the distance for diffusion of oxygen and nutrients from the blood into the cells, and it could be caused by an increased fluid flow out of blood or a decreased return of fluid to the blood. So remember, the blood is going to flow from the arterial side, get into the capillary bed, and it's going to go out into the interstitial fluid, and then it gets picked back up. So edema could be caused by either an excess flow out of the blood, or on the venous side, if it's not being picked up properly, that could also lead to edema. These are the questions for the segment. And this is all I have for you.